forget to turn yours on. I'm off key all the time. Come on, you can do this.
All right. All right. All right. Hi, Doc. Unfortunately, that's all the time we allotted for the general session. Ran a little long, I think. Well, my name is Monty Latchley. I'm the president of ODTUG, and I'm sheriff in these parts. And I'd like to introduce the people up here on stage with me. The hardest working board in the business. Barbara Morris, Jerry Ireland. Feel free to clap. Martin D'Souza, John King, Bambi Price, Cameron Lackpour, hiding behind me, Tim Gorman, and Tim Toe. Thank you. And a conference this size doesn't just happen. It takes a dedicated team. And the tip of the spear is my good friend Mike Riley, our conference chair. And his team, Natalie Delamar, Gary Chrissy, and Oracle nerd Chet Justice. Give him a hand. Since you guys are in the clapping mood, let's keep it going. We wouldn't think about holding a conference like this without YCC, Your Conference Connection. And I'm talking about Crystal Walton, our executive director. Kathleen McCaslin, go ahead. Kathleen McCaslin, and all the staff here and back home in Wilmington, North Carolina. Let's give them a hand. They do a masterful job making us look good, and I'll say it for you, that's not an easy job sometime. But anyway, we're going to have a great general session planned for you today. Sit back, relax, and we'll be right back. It'll only encourage them. We're back. Comment ça va, mon cher? Down in Louisiana, that's how we say, how are you doing? And you come back to me with, ça va bien. And that lets me know that I'm doing fine, Monty. I'm happy to be here at Kscope 13. Well, we're happy to have you. Louisiana will always be a special place for me personally. It's where I was born. Most of my family still lives here. It feels like coming home. And New Orleans will always be a special place for ODTUG. We were first here in 2005, right before Hurricane Katrina. We returned in 2008, and we are so very pleased to be here in 2013. New Orleans is everything we could hope for in a conference city. And you could say that putting on conferences like Kscope is what New Orleans does for a living. What a year it's been. When we last met, we were in San Antonio, Texas, and I was wearing control top pantyhose. As far as anyone in this room knows, that's the last time that's happened. But in San Antonio, we were known as the Oracle Development Tools User Group. Today, we are known as ODTUG. So what is ODTUG? I could say ODTUG is an independent, not-for-profit, global organization that keeps you informed and on the cutting edge of the changing Oracle technology landscape. But I'd rather explain it like this. ODTUG is the guy sitting to your left, the Forms 4.5 developer who now associates himself with Forms 11G, Application Express, ADF, perhaps .NET. It's the guy to your right, the CTO, who comes to Kscope knowing he'll get one-on-one time with the Oracle product managers and getting the information that he needs to chart the strategic direction of his company. ODTUG are the people here on the front row who give of their time and energy to ensure that the Kscope experience is second to none. ODTUG is you, ODTUG is me, ODTUG is 25,000 of us worldwide. ODTUG boasts members in 126 countries. In fact, more and more, we're going to where you are at. We've held events in Belgium. We've held events in Canada, in New Zealand, Australia, with events in India and China on the horizon. Some recent initiatives. There's our webinar program, where we're putting upwards to 100 webinars a year on various topics. Most importantly, they're archived for our members on demand. Earlier this year, we instituted the leadership program, and I'm pleased to announce that later this week we'll graduate 3 outstanding women, Debbie Golnick, Deanna Sunday, and Sarah Zumbrum. And if you're not taking advantage of our technical library, you're not taking advantage of your membership. Make your first stop ODTUG.com.
So I know this will be a tremendous shock to him, but I'm here to announce the Editor's Choice Award for the best white paper at Kscope 13. It's David Schleiss. David, come on up.
It's for David's paper, What? You're still not using Groovy?
Next, I'd like to welcome Victoria Lear of Oracle Corporation, Senior Program Manager for the Oracle Technology Network.
Vicki lives and works in Colorado with her husband and 3 children, and she rules the ACE program with an iron fist. Vicki?
Thanks. As Tim already mentioned, I'm with Oracle and I'm responsible for the ACE program. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the program, is Oracle's way of recognizing outstanding contributors in the Oracle community. We recognize individuals who are frequently and actively sharing their technical knowledge and expertise with their fellow community members. And I'm very pleased to be here to present the Oracle ACE Director recognition to ODTUG board member John King.
John, you can't put that jacket on just yet. You have to learn the ACE Director secret handshake.
Yeah, and thank you, Vicki, for teaching each one of us, ACE Directors, the secret handshake.
Good afternoon. I'm Barbara Morris.
And I'm Martin D'Souza. We're here to announce the Oracle Contributor of the Year Award.
This award goes to the person or persons who provide ODTUG with the most sensitive and secret emails and documents that come out of Redwood Shores. Past winners include Todd Trickler, Vicki and Lillian, David Peak, Al Marcente, and last year's winner, Chris Rice.
Well, Barbara, it's funny you mentioned Chris Rice because unfortunately he's not with us today. He's actually in Hong Kong hanging out with Richard Snowden.
This year's winner actually provided us with the exact hour for the release of 12C.
Unfortunately, he didn't provide us with a day, the month, or even the year. Now, this person is one of this conference's most prolific tweeters. He is also one of Business Insider's 23 most thought-provoking enterprise tech execs that smart people are following.
please help us give a big hand to this year's winner, Senior Principal Product Manager, Jeff Smith.
It's 2 o'clock.
Congratulations.
Hi, my name's Bambi Price.
And I'm Jerry Iron.
We're here to present the ODTUG Volunteer Award. This individual is a behind-the-scenes person. I've known him for 8 years.
And I've known him for 16 years.
And in those past 16 years, he's volunteered at ODTUG conferences across 3 continents, North America, Europe, Australia, and also represented ODTUG at Open World.
Some of the things he's done, he's taken staff and participants to the hospitals and doctors' rooms.
He's delivered meals to sick attendees at other hotels.
He's probably best known as the master of the ODTUG room signs.
He's the quiet achiever.
He's helped ODTUG in many, many ways we can't possibly list.
And it's fitting that he receives the award here in New Orleans, where he received his doctorate in public health from Tulane University.
Please join us in thanking the ODTUG Volunteer Award recipient, Mac McCaslin, for all he's done.
Well, welcome everyone. My name's Mike Riley. I'm the Kscope 13 conference chair. And yes, I'm addicted to ribbons. Thanks, Monty, for needling me. I can do without it from now on. Mac, I wanted to make sure and congratulate you on winning the volunteer award this year. I can't think of a better man to win the award. Once again, Mac McCaslin. So, welcome to the biggest Kscope ever. There are more attendees here than ever before. There are more exhibitors down in the exhibit hall. This is the biggest and best Kscope of them all. So I have a few things to tell you about Kscope 13. Immediately after the general session here tonight, the second line will come back and lead you all down to the exhibit hall, where we'll have an hour of drinks and food with the exhibitors, and we'll have a meet and greet with our keynote speaker. Tomorrow, during lunch, the OTN crew is sponsoring the Lunch and Learn panels once again, led by the Oracle ACE directors here. So make sure and mark that down on your schedule for lunch tomorrow. Pick your favorite session, grab your lunch, and go to the room for an hour of the interactive discussions. We'll also have crossover sessions tomorrow night after the second happy hour in the exhibit hall, which these 2 sessions will be unopposed. They will be presented by Oracle ACE Andy Jorgensen on Hyperion 101, and our newest Oracle ACE director, John King, will be presenting the Database Dev Tools 101 session. So this is your chance to see some of the other side of the house and experience it. Me, myself, I'm going to Andy's session, so I encourage you to sign up and go to those sessions as well. Wednesday at lunchtime, we will have our first ever Women in Technology panel. And guess what, guys? It's not just for women. There's even a guy on the panel, so I suggest that you mark that down on your schedule and attend that as well. Who can think of a better place to have a special event in New Orleans than Blaine Kern's Mardi Gras World? So Wednesday evening at 6:15, you will need to take your blue ticket out of your badge. holder. You do not need to take the badge with you, just the ticket. 6:15 down in the lobby, the buses will begin boarding. They will be continuously looping between here and Blaine Kern's Mardi Gras World. They'll drop you off at the front door where you get to go through the float den. We'll have some surprises in the float den. We'll move on to the mansion area where we'll have food, some drinks, and some music as well. And more surprises as it turns out. Then we'll move on to the ballroom where we'll have drinks, dancing, and a live band to dance the night away to. And again, as we've done before, our signature finale will be a fireworks event, this time over the Mississippi River. So you don't want to miss it. Wednesday night, whenever we're done with the special event, you can hop back on the bus and it'll drop you right back here at the Sheraton. And then our closing session may not be quite as funny as this one, maybe more so, I don't know. But we'll recap the week here at Kscope 13. We'll look ahead to Kscope 14, and then we'll also announce the Best Speaker Award for the conference. So now I'd like to thank our vendors and sponsors that are here this week. Our platinum sponsors, Applied OLAP and Interrel Consulting. Our gold sponsors, CXO Cockpit and Peloton. Our silver sponsors, Accenture, Bluestone International, Edgewater Ranzel, Finite Solutions, and Proficient. And our more than 50 exhibitors down in the exhibit hall. They're all wonderful and they make it a great experience here at Kscope. Make sure you visit the exhibitors. Let's give them all a round of applause. So now let's talk about rumors for Kscope 14. Who's going to be going to Kscope 14? Okay, this one isn't a rumor. I'm going. I'm the Kscope 14 conference chair, so that's not even fair. Bill Gates? President Barack Obama? Larry? I didn't hear any reaction to that one. Beyonce? How about Pearl Jam for our special event? The Zac Brown Band? Or Macklemore? Okay, so let's talk about some rumors about where Kscope might be next year. We could be in San Francisco, down at Fisherman's Wharf. How about Denver at Red Rocks? St. Louis. That'd be great for me. No airfare involved. And Wayne. So that'd be okay. Washington, D.C. How about the land of Mickey and Shrek? Orlando. Nah. So we've been giving you some clues about where Kscope 14 is going to be held next year. And so let's review some of those and reveal where we're actually going. Macklemore was one of the clues. And no yelling it out if you know it. Death Cab for Cutie, that was the music that was playing when I came up here. The reference to Better Man and Pearl Jam. Bill Gates and the Windows splash screen. If you weren't paying attention in The Most Interesting Developer, the Windows splash screen was shown in Bambi's laptop. I know they're obscure sometimes. The Starbucks coffee cup. And if you haven't guessed it by now, needling. Yes, Kscope 14 will be held in Seattle, Washington, June 22nd through the 26th, 2014. So Seattle's a great and vibrant city, and we'll be in the heart of the city, right near the famous Pike Place Market, the monorail, and the Central Link Light Rail. It's near Pioneer Square. It's near the Space Needle, Chihuly Gardens, the EMP Museum, which is a great museum that has music, sci-fi, and pop culture in it, and much, much more. This is a picture of the bubblegum wall in Pike Place Market. Yeah, okay, sorry, I'll move on. This is the market itself. And this is a picture of the Space Needle from Chihuly Gardens. And the Space Needle itself will be housed at the Washington State Convention and Trade Center. That's in downtown Seattle, as I said, and it's right across the street from our headquarters hotel, the Seattle Sheraton, a Starwood property. The hotel's a comfortable walk out the door to the convention center, and it's literally right next door to it. The convention center was recently remodeled, and it's a beautiful facility that will house all of us comfortably. Seattle's going to be a great location for us. It's our first time in the Pacific Northwest, and I expect that this will be a great destination for our attendees and all their families once again. So this is one of the fishmongers at Pike Place Market. He's ready for us to be there as well. And since I had a secret link to Kscope 14, this is a picture of the new Kscope 14 website. It will be live later this evening, Wayne. And now, the Kscope 14 giveaway. So what we did this year is underneath your seat, there is one seat in here that has a postcard taped to it. That person wins the Kscope 14 registration. And if it's not in your seat and there's an empty seat next to you, here we go, we got a winner over here. So make sure and take that postcard to registration, and you'll get your free Kscope 14 registration. All right, we've had a lot of fun here tonight, but it's now my extreme pleasure to be able to introduce our keynote speaker this year. You know, 6 years ago when we were here in New Orleans, Kathleen McCaslin initiated ODTUG's first ever Community Service Day, and now that has become Kscope's signature event. It's a day in which we give back to the community that we visit, and we all try to step up and make a difference, a positive difference in the world. Doc Hendley was a bartender and a musician in Raleigh, North Carolina, when he envisioned the concept of installing clean water systems to those in need throughout the world, from the victims of government-supported genocide in Darfur, Sudan, to the victims of earthquakes in Haiti. Doc's Wine to Water nonprofit aid organization is focused on providing clean water to the needy people around the world. But rather than me take up any more valuable time talking about Doc, let's bring Doc up to the stage and let you listen to him.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. All right, I got a quick video to show y'all before I get started, if that's all right.
1.1 billion people in the world don't have access to clean water. My efforts are going to be a drop in the bucket. But if I had never taken that step because it was too big of a problem, then we wouldn't be anywhere right now.
Gracias, señores.
In December of 2003 is when the idea came for the organization Wine to Water. We're very involved with water filtration around the world.
When we take the water from the street and we put it in here, the water that's in the bottom is not going to be making you feel sick to your stomach anymore.
February of last year, I get a phone call from someone in the CNN Heroes department saying that I've been nominated, which was completely shocking.
From Boone, North Carolina, meet Doc Hendley. Through his Wine to Water program, this bartender provides clean, sustainable water to thousands worldwide.
This ceiling that we were kept hitting over and over, that we can only tell this amount of people about this water crisis, was just completely shattered. Everything from when you're nominated to getting through the top 10 to being in the Kodak Theater could not have made me and everybody that was around me feel more special. And I'm very proud to be a part of this group.
For many trapped in the rubble of downtown Port-au-Prince, the struggle to live continues.
The earthquake happened in Haiti. Immediately I went down there and to figure out where I could be plugged in.
She can't get well if she doesn't have anything to drink.
Obviously, you can see it's something that I'm very passionate about now. Sorry, I never, yeah. 5 years, my goal is to have reached 1 million people for clean water.
If you find something you're passionate about, I don't care who you are, you will make a difference.
My name is Doc Hendley. I'm a 2009 CNN hero. I started the organization Wine to Water.
All right, so I've got to be completely honest with you guys and say that I always have a little bit of a hard time starting out with that video, because CNN's job when they made it was to make me look as absolutely perfect as possible. And they even had a hair and makeup lady follow me around everywhere. I don't really need the hair, definitely don't need the hair, don't need the makeup. And I think she was more concerned actually with my beard to make sure my hair, my beard wasn't going everywhere anyway. But the problem with that is that's not who I am at all. I'm one of the more imperfect, average, maybe even below average people that you'll ever meet in your entire life. And because of that mentality that I had of myself, that I was always a very average or below average person, I had a difficult time growing up in my family, because I came from a family of extremely exceptional, above average people. And I'm not kidding, it was a crazy scenario that I had growing up. And just to give you an idea, sports, athletics was a huge measure of success in my family. And I loved playing sports, I loved playing ball. So I started thinking football, maybe I could play some football. But the problem is I never would live up to the standards of my granddaddy, who he ended up playing professional football for the Pittsburgh Steelers back in 1950-51. He was an All-American in Clemson growing up. So I never quite could measure up. In fact, I never really got off the bench in football, because I was really slow and I wasn't ever really that strong anyway. So football didn't really work out. So I'm thinking, all right, basketball. I could play basketball. I like playing in the backyard. Maybe I'll pick that up. Well, it just so happens that as I started getting a little confidence and getting okay at basketball, my younger brother, who's about almost 5 years younger than me, he turned out being 6'9". So can you imagine, like, I'm a 19-year-old kid, playing some ball, and then your 14-year-old brother comes and, like, dunks on you. It's not really good for your confidence at all, So basketball went out, so I'm thinking, okay, I can play golf. For God's sakes, I can play golf. I know I can play golf, so I'll start with that, play some golf. Well, my cousin, who I grew up with, actually ended up being really, really good at golf. His name is Lucas Glover. He won the U.S. Open a few years ago. He's on the PGA Tour right now, like killing it, And so with sports, I never measured up with sports. So then I look at academics. Maybe I could impress my teachers, my parents, my leaders in my life with my schooling. Turns out I was never really a great student either. I was a C student, a D student, some of the other letters too, down there. I found out later in life, though, that, I don't really learn so well by putting me in a desk, sitting me in a room, putting a teacher in front of me, and have to hear her preach all week long, and then I'm expected to spit that information back on a test on Friday. It just didn't work for me, So I was never great in school, And my sister, though, who was phenomenal in school, she, when she graduated, she walked down the stage. She looked completely different than everybody else. She had all these things that hung around her neck. She was the salutatorian or the valedictorian, one of the really smart Torian people that gets to wear all the tassels and everything. For me, I was really, really lucky just to graduate. And then a whole nother level, my old man was a preacher man growing up. And so for me, being the son of a preacher man, I was expected to live to a certain standard. I was expected to follow the rules. I was expected to do what I was told. The problem with how I was made, though, is that if you put rules in front of me, I make it my life's mission to see how quickly and uniquely I can break those rules. That's just who I am. So I've always felt like I failed miserably even on that level of my life. So everything, athletics, academics, the spiritual side of life, I was a failure. I did not live up to the standards of the world around me that saw fit for me. And so I remember looking at my siblings and my my cousins, my friends, and I'd see the coaches and teachers, you know, they'd put their arms around them and say, you know, you're going to do great things with your life. You know, and they'd come up to me and be like, Doc, we just hope you stay out of prison, buddy, you know. I'm like, oh, okay, great, thanks for that. So what happened? Why am I up here today? I don't really know. I don't really have a great answer for what happened, but I know exactly when it happened. This was December of 2003. Just before that, I had gotten off a really long, adventurous motorcycle ride for quite a few years all around the country. I really kind of embraced that lifestyle of being a rebel and a nobody, a failure at life. So I kind of embraced that whole biker lifestyle. And I just came off the road. My mom had convinced me to go back to school and get a degree. She's like, please just try to get a college degree. So I was finishing up a degree in Raleigh, North Carolina at North Carolina State University. I was actually getting a degree in something called communications. And I still, even though I had one semester left in December of 2003, I still had no idea what a communications major was or what they did. And in fact, I think I might have taken that major for all the wrong reasons, because when I sat down with my academic advisor in like 2 years, she was like, okay, Doc, you can't just take classes in everything, in just randomness, and you major in randomness. You have to pick a major. And I'm like, well, what do you got? So she pulls out all the different majors, and I think she somehow mistakenly showed me the gender breakdown in each major. And communications had like 80% women. And I'm like, I don't know what that is, but that's exactly what I want to be studying right there, for God's sake. So I'm getting a degree for all the wrong reasons or the right reasons, depending on how you look at it. I'm also bartending my way through school. And actually, I picked up my skills as a bartender kind of in my biker days. You can go from one town to the next, and it's a quick, easy way to make cash, you know, once you learn how to sling drinks at a bar. And but to be honest with you, I actually really loved being a bartender. And it wasn't just because, you know, the crazy nights sometimes that we had and the fun, but I really, truly loved the people in the service industry. I loved being a bartender because I loved a happy hour. You know, we'd sit down at 5, 6 o'clock, and you have all your guys come in after work or your girls coming in after work, and you could have the CEO of a company sitting right here next to a school teacher, next to a construction worker, next to somebody who's just lost their job, and everybody's on the same playing field. Nobody's looking up or down at anybody else. Everybody's there just to forget about their day, have a couple drinks, talk about sports or politics or whatever, just to forget about life for a while. And I love that about my job. I love being able to build those relationships with those people. But I also knew that, you know, maybe this isn't what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And then I'm also, the third thing that I was doing at the time was playing some music, play a little live music. And when it all started was I just got done playing a gig, and I'm not even that great of a musician either. Like, I have to sing stuff like Johnny Cash and Merle Haggard, because you don't have to be an American Idol amazing singer to sing Johnny Cash, for God's sakes. I could wake up in the morning with a cold and sound better singing Johnny Cash than I do with that one. So I just got done singing Johnny Cash songs. I'm sitting at the bar with my best friend in the world at the time. Her name is Tasha Sullivan. And she kind of just looks over at me. We're having a beer. And she's like, is this it? Is this all you're going to do with your life? You might finish your degree, God knows how, and just keep bartending and playing music the rest of your life? And I'm like, yep, that sounds pretty good to me. That's what I want to do with my life. And she didn't smile. She just looked at me square in the face, and she said, you know, you're better than this. You have more to offer this world than wasting your life away in a bar room. And she threw down her money, and she just kind of walked out. And I remember I sat there by myself for a while just thinking, you know, that may have been, from what I can remember, the first time that somebody that I really loved and trusted ever looked at me and said something like that to me that was encouraging. It was strong, but it was encouraging to me that this person that I trusted, she believed in me. She thought I had more to offer this world than what I was doing. So I remember I asked for 2 weeks off from the bar. It was already December 2003. I had school off anyway for Christmas. So I went home to a small mountain town in Boone, North Carolina, just to kind of get away. This is where my parents were living at the time, just to kind of decompress and just think about life for a little bit. And the night that it all happened was a crazy night. I was kind of trying to go to sleep. And you know that weird time when you're kind of half asleep, you're kind of half awake, you know, you're not really either one, and you're having those funky dreams and all that kind of stuff. Well, it was right there, and I had this like weird, almost audible voice in my head over and over with the words, wine to water, wine to water, over and over in my head. I remember like waking up and kind of freaking out like this, and then I remember I keep a pad and a pen near my bed because I actually do like to write some of my own music. I enjoy writing songs. So I thought, I grabbed the pad and I'm like, okay, this is it. This is really cool inspiration for the next, you know, country charts topping song, Wine to Water. Here it goes. You know, I got really excited. You know, I'm going to write a new song here. And I grabbed my pad and my pen and I wrote down Wine to Water on the page. And I remember staring at those words as they were written out on the page. And I kind of got all like nervous feeling inside, and my guts kind of got all knotted up. And I just kept looking at those words thinking, you know, I don't know, I think it's more than the song. I think this is stuck in my head for some crazy reason, you know, and maybe I'm supposed to know something here. And so I looked at those words, and obviously I'd heard it the other way around. My old man, like I said, was a preacher man, so I'd heard the story the other way around plenty of times, but why is it on my page backwards? You know, why is it stuck in my head backwards? You know, so I looked at the words, and I looked at the first word, wine, and I figured, you know what, I know plenty about wine. I'm a bartender, for God's sake, so what about water? Am I supposed to know something about water? I have no idea. So I remember I walked downstairs to my parents' computer, and I know this probably isn't the best group to be telling this to, but most of my life I've been one of the most technologically unsavvy people that you will ever meet. The fact that I could use this clicker is pretty amazing. I'm not even sure if I can. But I had just heard from some folks in school, some other students, and y'all can't make fun of me too bad because this is like almost 2004, but I had heard about this thing called Google, you know, to me, that had just come out. And it's this new thing you could get on a computer and just type in information, and it just spits back answers. So I remember sitting in front of this computer, and I'm like, I'm going to try this Google thing out. And so I started typing, like, you know, water problems. Actually, it's probably more like water problems, water, you know, water issues. And what filled that screen is what changed my life. I remember reading the very first thing that said, at the time, 1.1 billion people with a B don't have access to clean drinking water. I remember staring at that number for a long time and kind of scratching my head and being like, now wait a minute, that doesn't really make sense. I'm not a math major, but I'm pretty sure there's only like 6 or 7 billion people in the world. So if over one of those billion people don't have access to clean drinking water, I'm pretty sure that I would have heard about that by now. So I'm pretty sure this Google thing's all jacked up. There's no way. There's no way it can be right. But sure enough, another search, over 1 billion people. Another search, over 1 billion people. And then I saw some report from somebody that looked legitimate, the United Nations group, you know, WHO, the World Health Organization. And they said, this is the one that really got me, that more children in our world are dying from dirty water than anything else. Anything. And then it listed the next 3 on top of that. The second one was HIV/AIDS. I remember looking at that and like, I know all about that. My favorite musicians and bands, they do the Red campaign. I know plenty about that, what's going on with that. That was number 2. Number 3 is malaria. I'm like, you know, I don't know too much about malaria, but I do know, I learned in school that malaria felled more of our soldiers in Vietnam than bullets. So I knew that was pretty bad. And then the fourth one under was one that actually I'd never really heard much about, except for in one instance. I don't know if y'all remember when I was little in elementary school, they used to make me play the game Oregon Trail on the computer. You know, those green screen computer, you got to go all the way across the U.S. to Oregon. Well, the last one was called tuberculosis. And whenever I played that game, Oregon Trail, my wife would always die from tuberculosis right in the Mississippi River. Like right when I get there, it's like, your wife is dead from tuberculosis. So I don't know what it is, but I knew it was bad because my wife would always die from it. So I'm looking at that, and the next statement said that water kills more than all 3 of those combined. Combined together. All those things that I had heard about well. But it receives less than 20% of the funding in the research, while the others receive over 80%. And I just remember looking at these numbers and these figures. I ended up staying up the entire night researching this. I just couldn't believe it. From where I was sitting, from what I was reading, this is obviously the most pressing crisis facing our world. but it also seems like it's the one that has the least that's being done about it. So I remember taking that pad and that pencil that I had with me, and instead of writing down some cheesy country song that would have never gone anywhere anyway, I ended up kind of jotting down the concept for this organization that we have now. And in the beginning, it wasn't that we would be, 15 different countries around the world, helping hundreds of thousands of people and save their lives to get clean drinking water. In the beginning, I was just like, I just want to do one thing right with my life. I want to do one thing well. Maybe I could do something to help one family or one village or one group of people somewhere, And so I took that pad and that paper, and I basically drew down the concept for an event, for a way to raise some funding to fight this water crisis. I called it, obviously, a wine to water event. That's a good place to start. It took me about a month and a half to pull together the first event. I had never been to a fundraiser before, much less put one on myself, but I just looked at the resources I had around me as a bartender. I got access to booze, which is really important if you want to have a successful event anywhere. I could get a free place, to have an event from a local club owner. I can get free food from some of the restaurants that I had worked in. I can get amazing live music from yours truly here to provide some music. How hard can it be? So a month and a half goes by. February of 2004, I held the very first wine to water event. I had about 300 people show up. At the end of the night, I was blown away because I'm sitting there with a stack of cash in my hands. I ended up counting out about $5,000 or $6,000. And I'd never seen that much money in one place before. It was crazy. And I remember just thinking, Tasha helped me with the event, and we just looked at each other and kind of giggled, like, I can't believe it worked, And there was a restaurant owner that came up to me later that night, and he was like, Doc, that was awesome. Can we do this in my place across town? And I'm like, sure, we could do another one. So another month goes by, I raise another like $4,000 or $5,000. Then I opened a P.O. box and a bank account. People started sending in checks and saying, couldn't make it to the event, but here's some money. And next thing I knew, I got to an account with like tens of thousands of dollars in it, and I had no clue how to get it to these people. No clue. In fact, I even look back and think, what? I may have even been doing something illegal because I didn't have any charity status or nothing. I was just like, yeah, give me your money. Sure, I'll use it. I was good. I checked into it later. I was good. So I'm sitting on all this money, no clue how to get it to that guy there. I could see him. I've been doing all this research. I can see where they are, but how do you get to them? So I've done a lot of thought. I kept thinking, I would love to get to be the guy that gets to go over and do this work. I'd love to get to be the guy that gets to go in and single-handedly save kids and drill wells and do whatever it is these water people do. But to be realistic, I'm going to end up spending the majority of my money on just getting to wherever this place is. And then after I get there, I got to get trained. You know what? I won't be able to hardly get any money to these people. So maybe, I don't know, maybe it'd be better, why reinvent the wheel? Why not just find an already established organization, take the money, and just give that money to them and just keep raising money for them? I can do that. That sounds good. So that was my conclusion. So I found a group also based right there in North Carolina. My parents knew somebody that was working there. And I got a meeting with one of their really high ups. It's a phenomenal organization. I did a lot of research on them, found out that over 92% of their money actually went to the programs, not to somebody's Mercedes and personal jet and all that kind of stuff. So that was really important to me. And on top of that, they had a phenomenal water program. So I did a lot of research, and I went to visit them, and I got a meeting with one of their actually the head of all their international programs, so one of the highest up guys in their organization. And I remember the very first day I walked into these people's office. This is a very large, substantially sized organization. I walk in there, and immediately I kind of got a little, self-conscious. I looked around. Everybody was dressed differently than me. It was a fairly conservative organization. They all had, ties on and khakis and slacks, and nobody had tattoos at all, or that I could see anyway. And I walked. This is about as dressed up as I get right here. So I probably had like a T-shirt on, and I'm covering up a little bit and getting a little self-conscious. And then I get in this guy's office, and I get there a little before he was there. So of course I had to snoop around a little bit, So I'm like looking on the walls and looking at pictures of him. The very first picture I saw is him shaking hands with the president, George Bush, smiling. And this handwritten letter from the president saying, his name was Kenny Isaacs, Mr. Isaacs, thank you for all your hard work, signed, blah, 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 signed the president. And then I see this other picture of him and some, other president I just saw on CNN and some other tribal leader I just saw on TV or whatever. And I'm like, who is this guy that I'm getting ready to meet? So I got really nervous and self-conscious, and he comes right in. He's very direct. We sit down together, and he's like, how can I help you? And when I get nervous, I talk really fast, so I just kind of looked down and I said, Mr. Isaacs, my name's Doc Hendley. I'm a bartender in Raleigh, and I've raised like tens of thousands of dollars, and I'm just here to give it to you, sir. And he's like, slow down, Doc. You're a bartender, and you've raised a pretty substantial amount of money, and you're just here to give that money away to our organization. And I said, yes, sir. And he's like, you're not taking any, skimming off the top, keeping any for yourself on the side? No, sir. And he just looked at me and said, well, why would you do that? And I thought for a while, and I'm not really sure if I had a good answer for him. I just said, I don't really know why. All I know is that for the first time in my life, I actually feel like I have the ability to have a positive impact on this world. For the last few months, for the first time in my life, I feel like maybe I could do something for somebody else instead of always just living my life for myself. So if it's okay, I'm just going to go back to Raleigh. I'm going to keep raising this money. I'm going to keep bringing it to you and the good organization that you got here. And he sat for a minute and he said, I tell you what, I got a better idea. How about you keep your money? Why don't you come work for me? I'll teach and train you how to do this work, send you anywhere in the world that you want to go, and you bring that money with you, and you start supporting the projects that you think you need to support, and we'll teach you how to do this. So that way when you come home, it already looks like you know how to raise the money well. I'll give you the field side training. You could take those two and put it together and create this dream of yours called Wine to Water that you've told me about. And I was shocked. I almost fell out of my chair. I was like, yes, that would be awesome. And his next question is, okay, well, where do you want to go? And I said, well, I don't really know too much about the world. I've done a little bit of research on this, but I don't really know much about the problem areas. I tell you what, if you'll just send me to the worst place in the world that you can think of, we'll call it even. That's what I said. He did one of those, like, he raised his one eyebrow and he's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yes, sir, I'm sure. And so a lot of people think I was being brave when I said that. And that's not the case at all. Actually, what I was thinking is that, look, if I've never really viewed myself as the most intelligent person in the world, even if you put me in the worst place in the world, I'm pretty sure that I can have a good impact there. That was my thought process. So he said, all right, I'll tell you what, it's between two places I can think of right now. One is Afghanistan. It's 2004. We just had a war break out there. There's a pretty serious water crisis going on. So it's a pretty hard spot. And he's like, but we've got a team that's on the ground. So when you get there, they can help you get adequated, learn the ropes, kind of figure out what you're doing. There's another place that's really bad right now as well, and it's called Darfur. And it's in the western region of Sudan. And he's like, it's in sub-Saharan Africa, so it's pretty hot. Sometimes temperatures could get to 120, 130 degrees. Serious water crisis going on. Civil war, and also right in the middle of what's just happening, just now starting, is a genocide is occurring, where the government of Sudan, it's actually not even a religious thing that was going on. The government of Sudan, which is a Muslim group, began killing the people in Darfur, who were also a Muslim group, because of their ethnicity, because they were local black tribal Muslims instead of nomadic Muslims. So they decided to systematically extinguish as many as they could in this area to ethnically cleanse the area for the nomadic Arabs to move in. So it's a pretty bad situation there. And on top of the genocide, we also don't have anybody on the ground right now. You'll be one of the first ones to get there, and you're just going to kind of have to figure it out on your own. And I'm like, desert, war, genocide, alone. Yep, I think that's the worst place in the world. You can send me there. So I guess it was about 6 months after my very first event, this would have been August of 2004, I was on a plane to this place here, to Darfur. And this first place that you see on there, it's a camp, my very first camp that I chose to work in. It's called Marla Camp. There's between 8,000 to 10,000 people that were living in this camp. It's like a refugee camp. And I remember getting there on my first day, and I had a little point-and-shoot camera with me. I saw these women and children. I kind of snapped this picture because this was the beginning of their walk every single day, 4 and 5 hours in the hot desert sun to get water. And then right back. And then later on in the evening, same thing, twice a day. I got to do it again. And I remember doing this with them, walking it with them, and just being like, this is insane. This is 2004. And we have women and children walking the majority of their day, hours upon hours, to get something that we have that comes out of a tap, that I can wash my lawn and my car with and sit in the shower for 30 minutes if I want to. And they walk hours to get it. It was one thing to see it on a screen, on a computer screen, and research it from home, from my safe home in the confines here and on a computer. But it was another thing to be in this desert walking it with them. And the other bad thing about this situation, the reason why they were living in a camp on top of each other in this small camp, is because of the whole concept of safety in numbers. They were fleeing the bad guys, the government and their sponsored militias that were called the Janjaweed, which in the local language means evil horsemen. The guys that would come in to do all this killing. The government would come in with helicopter gunships. They'd bomb a village. And after everybody's freaking out because the bombs, the evil horsemen, the Janjaweed, would come on horses and camels with their machine guns, and they would clean up whatever the helicopters didn't finish. So they lived together with safety in numbers, and they had a rebel group that I'll talk about that was fighting against the government that protected them while they were in this camp. But the problem is when they walked outside of the camp, they didn't have any more protection. That's when the bad things happened to a lot of the women and children living there from the bad guys. And I'm like, I don't know what I can do, but I've got to keep them from walking. I've got to keep them from walking. The problem is I didn't have a drilling machine. The best case scenario for them would have been to put a well right in the middle of that camp, and then they could just have clean well water right at their fingertips. I didn't have a $200,000-300,000 drilling machine. I didn't have access to that. I didn't have that kind of money. But a lot of organizations also partner together. You know, I could have potentially partnered with another organization to drill there. The problem is the camp that I chose to go in, Marla Camp, it lay right in the middle of what's called a United Nations no-go zone. When I got on the ground in Darfur, my first few weeks, I was going to all these United Nations security meetings, and they showed me these maps. And in the maps, there were these big, yellow lines and marker with lines through it, and it would say UN no go. And I remember raising my hand, being like, "What does that mean?" And the guy's like, "Well, it means the UN can't go there." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, UN no go." Well, I'm not the UN, right? They're like, "No." So I could work in these areas if I'd like to, because it looks like there's Marla, there's Sanya Fandu, there's Hijer, there's all these villages here with people, these camps, and so you're telling me that nobody's really helping them out. I'm like, yeah, the reason why they're UN no-go zones is they're quite dangerous. They're held by these rebel groups, and I'll talk about these guys in a minute, but there's constant fighting going on. And I thought to myself, well, geez, I'm already in the worst place in the world. I might as well go all in and go in the worst place in the world while I'm here. So that's why I chose Marla Camp. Because of that, I could not convince another organization that had a drilling machine to partner with me because of the insecurities in the area. So I did something different. Instead, I decided, you know what, I still want to keep them from walking. So we took a local truck. We welded a big old tank on the back of it. I had this truck driver drive to the nearest clean water well, water supply that he could, every single day and fill up a huge water tank, like it's called a water bladder, that we put right in the middle of the camp. Every single day, back and forth, to keep these women and children from walking. And I remember the first day that we filled that thing up. This truck came slishing and sloshing, and it filled up with water. And all these kids, if you go back to that picture there, you see the tents behind on the hill, if I can get it up. There's thousands of kids that live in this camp. There's 8,000 to 10,000 people in the camps. the majority of the population, there's hardly any men. They're either dead or they're fighting. So the majority are women and children, and I'd say probably 70% children. So thousands of kids surrounded me and my guys in the truck. They got their water out of this bladder, and it took them 2, 3, 4 minutes to bring their water back to their tent there instead of the 3, 4, 5 hours that it used to take them. So just a handful of minutes, they all came back. Thousands of kids surrounded me and my guys, around our truck, and they all started chanting, Moya, Moya, together, and which means it's the local word there for water. And then they all just went crazy, and a whole group of them went off over here, and you saw this like melted plastic, this ball made out of melted plastic trash. It kind of kicked up, and then a soccer game started over here with these kids. And this other group of kids had these wheels and these sticks and all these toys. They all started pulling their toys out, and they just went crazy. They just had fun. And I remember watching this kind of unfold before my eyes, and I'm like, I kind of realized that day this water crisis does so much more than just steal these children's physical lives. It steals their entire childhood. And it's happening every day all around the world. These kids are walking hours upon hours every day. They don't have time to be children. They're walking to get something that we have right at our fingertips. So it's a pretty big day for me. I got really motivated about the work that I was doing. And actually, about a month later, I actually was able to secure a drilling machine. Somebody, it's actually this Norwegian guy who had a machine who was about as crazy as me, who was willing to go and drill a well in this area. But right when we were getting ready to actually head out to drill the well, the government, they came in with their helicopter gunships, and they bombed all of Marla Camp, and they ended up killing a lot of the people that I had come to know and grow and love up until that point. And I think that was the first time that I really realized that this work wasn't going to be a cakewalk. This was not going to be easy. That was a difficult thing for me, but I ended up pushing forward. The guys that I was talking about earlier, the rebels, the ones that would help these people live in these camps and try to secure their areas, are these guys. And you can kind of look at them as the good guys because they're fighting for a purpose. They're fighting back against the Janjaweed, the evil horsemen, and the government, saying we're no longer going to allow you to kill our women and children just because of our ethnicity. So they're fighting back. The problem is that they actually killed just as many aid workers, such as myself, as did the bad guys, because they didn't trust anybody. And there's no law in this land. This is a lawless area, and so their thought was, well, geez, you might go be a spy to the government and just give away our location, so it's just easier just to kill them and be done with it, and so that's why it was a little bit difficult to work in these areas. But then I started watching how some of these organizations work. Let's say it's a food organization. They'd come into a village near, where the rebels would work, or in the outskirts. They'd come in with their trucks, and they'd kick food off the back of the truck as quick as they could for a month's supply for all these families, and then they were out of there. Or if it's a well drilling group, they bring in their machine, they drill a well, and then they were out of there as quick as they could. I remember watching this thinking, well, of course these guys don't trust us. We've never taken the time to build a relationship with them at all. I'm not a genius here. I've never had these classes in international policy. I don't have the masters and the doctorates like a lot of the other people that were doing this work. But to me, that was common sense. I learned that as a bartender, that it didn't make me a good bartender because I can make a mojito the fastest and slide it across the bar, or a Bloody Mary, here you go. That's not what made somebody a good bartender. To me, what I prided myself in my bartending ability had nothing to do with my drinks. In fact, my drinks were terrible. I didn't really make the best margarita. It was awful. But what I loved about my job was the people. The relationships is what made that job worth it for me. And so I looked at this the same thing. That's not what made you a good bartender. So it's not what's going to make me a good humanitarian worker. It's going to be my ability to make friends, to build relationships with people. So I did something a little different. I went to the very first rebel area, which is the area around Marla where these groups controlled. And I went straight to the guy who's like 2 to the left of me in that picture. You can see he's got a big thing hanging around his neck. That's a satellite phone. That's a Thuraya, which means, for me, that means he's the commander. He's the big dog. So I remember going right into him and getting out of my truck, seeing the guy, walk up to him. I had my translator who was kind of fumbling to get over there quick, but I tried to learn as much Arabic as I could. So I got up to him and I'd say, Assalamu alaikum, alhamdulillah, ana dok. I would go through what Arabic I had learned, and through my translator, I'd say something like, hey, is it okay if we go share a meal together? Will you come sit with me and my guys and have some coffee? I've got plenty of time. I'd love to come back to the village, where you're from, where your wife and your kids are, and just hang out for a few days, or whatever, something like that. And every time you'd see the commander, the guy, all these guys are hardcore, they're tough, and they'd sit and think about it. And he'd look at me and you'd see his eyes brighten up and this big bright white smile, and he's like, Nam, shukran jizero, yes, thank you very much. Next thing I know, I'm like hopping back in the truck, following these guys later on that night. They're slaughtering a goat. We're having a big feast, a big party. And I realized quickly that that's all it would take to gain these guys' trust. Just to sit down and share a meal with them. To see him as a father, as a husband, to see him with his guys and just get to know him as a man, as an individual, not as this scary rebel leader. That's all it took for me to be able to work in these areas. And so I was given access after meeting those guys. I was given access to all the other rebel-controlled areas and the other names of the commanders. And one of the only individuals that was able to work solely in United Nations no-go zones in Darfur. So I got pretty excited. I began going around the desert working, and one of the people that really made a huge impact on me is in another rebel group far away from Marla Camp, actually, in a place called Jebel Mara. I met this guy here. He was part of a rebel group that I got to know his commander really well. He didn't talk very much. His name was Mustafa. I took this picture of him when he was 12 years old. Mustafa never really talked much. He seemed to me to be like the hardest core of them all. And I remember talking to his commander one day, just asking him about Mustafa, his story, just having a conversation with him. He explained that when Mustafa was 9 years old, his family was killed by the Janjaweed, and he was able to make it out barely in the desert. And the rebels found him wandering in the desert, and they picked him up and they taught him how to fight. And I remember having a conversation with his commander, saying, what are you guys afraid of? What affects you guys the most? Are you worried you're getting ready to go out maybe later on today or tomorrow and go fight, the Janjaweed or whatever? And I remember him saying something that was really important. He was like, it's not the fighting that we fear the most. Yeah, we might lose somebody tomorrow or next week or get shot. And in fact, a lot of times they'd even come up to me. I remember after they get shot up, they'd come like a bullet hole in their arm. They'd say, Mr. Doc, you can help. And I'm like, look, man, I'm not a real doctor here. I cannot help you with your bullet hole wounds. However, I did see what their local witch doctor would do, and he would take things like poo and ash and put them in there. And I'm like, you can't put poo in a bullet hole wound. It just doesn't make any sense, for God's sakes. And then like a week later, they'd come up to me and their arms swollen up this big and like oozing, and like, can you help? And I'm like, yeah, of course, because you put poo in there, for God's sakes. So I did love to play doctor because I had this like really cool first aid kit in my truck. And so I'd get in there with the, those really long needle-nose pliers looking things with the clamp, and I'd dig in the bullet hole wounds with iodine. And even then, these guys are always just hardcore. I could be digging in a bullet hole wound and nothing. I'm saying, what are you guys afraid of? And I remember, he said, it's not the fighting, it's not the bullets, it's not what you would think. The thing that I think about and worry about the most are my two little girls back in my home village. If we have another cholera outbreak there, I don't think that they're going to make it. And even boys like Mustafa, he's still young, his system's still weak. He's constantly sick from the water that we're drinking. We probably have a greater chance of losing him to diarrheal disease or some problem with his stomach, more so than the fighting. And when I made the connection that he basically, what you're saying, basically, is you're more scared of the water than you are the bullets that are whizzing by your ears every day. It changed everything for me. And after doing some research, later on I found out that water actually kills more people in the world than all the world's wars and all the guns combined together. But we won't be reading those headlines in USA Today tomorrow. You won't be reading that in your local paper. So I got really motivated to continue working. And one of the jobs I would do after Marla Camp, I found that in the sub-Saharan region, there's a lot of wells, just like this one you see in the picture, that are broken, that are in non-working order. So I began to do a lot of digging, a lot of researching on my own, and I found out that in sub-Saharan Africa as a whole, over 60% of the wells that are in the ground are broken, are in non-working order, over half. So I'm starting to think, well, I don't have the money as a lot of these big organizations to have a nice brand new drilling machine, but I bet you I can fix one of those wells. So me and a group of local guys, we assembled a team, got some parts, we went around, started pulling the pumps and the guts out of these wells, and every time I'd pull the bottom out of the well, I'd see the pump sitting there soaking wet. And I was shocked every time. I just thought maybe the well had dried up, and that's what the locals thought. Yep, I don't think there's water there anymore. But we pulled it, it was wet, there's water. And then I'd look and some little small rubber seal or piece had broken, or a couple pipes had corroded and rusted, and they just needed to be replaced. Put it in the ground, next thing you know, water's going back. A few days later, you see a whole village form around that well. And I remember thinking to myself, it's crazy, I can have the same impact with just $50, $60, $70 right here as one of these organizations, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 or more for a brand new well. I could have the same impact. So I got super excited, kind of patting myself on my shoulder, walking high in my cowboy boots, thinking, you know, this is awesome. I'm having a great impact, saving a lot of lives with a little bit of money. And then it kind of hit me towards the end of my time there. I had to stop, and I was like, well, wait a minute. What's the point? I'm getting ready to leave in a handful of months, and these wells that I've just fixed, they're just going to break again. So why am I even doing this work? You know, and after a lot of thought, I started thinking, well, what if we do it differently? What if we were to bring extra toolkits and parts with us? And what if we were to, instead of doing all this work ourselves, help assemble a local committee there in the local village? And what if we were to teach and train these local people how to fix their own wells, how to fix their own problems, and leave them with the resources necessary to do that? Wouldn't that make more sense? And so I started working that way, and the very first village we went to, when I saw that local community leader see his little water team, and they got a whole toolkit, and they fixed the well themselves, put it in themselves, and such feeling of ownership and empowerment to that community leader and all these folks, I decided on that day, this is how I want this organization I've been dreaming about, Wine to Water, this is how we're going to work. What's the point in going around the world and giving people stuff away for free if you never teach them how to access these things on their own? You know, so I decided this is how I want to work. I got really excited to come home and start this dream called Wine to Water, where we could be doing this type of work in countries all over the world. But I had a couple more things, I think, a few more lessons I reckon I needed to learn before I could leave. One of them, I was coming back actually from Mustafa's area in Jebel Mara. I was driving back. We had just brought some chlorine tablets to an area that had a cholera outbreak. I was driving back, and I got to a village that normally is a ghost town that had already been destroyed. Nobody lived there anymore. And I started getting close to it, and I realized that there were people there. And as I got closer, I realized that a lot of them were on horseback and camel, and then a lot of them had guns slung over, and I'm kind of like, you know, what do I need to do? Then I realized quickly there's like 4 guys on this side of the road, another 4 or 5 guys on this side of the road, and they're all kind of hidden behind trees and rocks, you know, with guns, you know, just waiting. And I'm kind of like, all right, what do I do? Do I stop and reason with these guys? Do I just go? And we had run-ins with the Janjaweed before up until this point. I've had them, they'll jump in the road a lot of times when they're in the area. They'll shoot off their guns, stop the truck. I've had them pull my men out of the truck, beat them pretty bad, strip them naked of all their clothes, of our things. We've had some pretty serious things happen from the Janjaweed, but they always made themselves seen. They always jumped in the road and shot their guns off. So I'm thinking, you know, this just doesn't add up. What do I need to do? So this last minute, I just decided, you know what, I'm just gonna go. I'm not gonna stop. And right when I hit the gas, I was driving the front vehicle. My window was down. I had my arm out the window. Right when I hit the gas, the guy that was the closest to me, he had his gun kind of follow me, and he shot. And I could feel like the blast from his barrel because he was so close. And I guess the bullet must have gone just in front or just behind, I don't know. And then they all started shooting, and I could hear the bullets just whizzing by. sing, sing, pang, panging off the metal in the truck and smashing out my windows. And I remember the truck behind me, it got a tire shot out. We had 2 gas tanks in that vehicle, thank goodness, because my gas tank got shot out. And a lot of people asked, like, were you freaked out when that happened? Like, what was going through your head? And I always tell people, I guess when something happens like that, it happens so fast that you don't really have a chance to be scared. Like your adrenaline kicks in and you just start making decisions. But I do remember there was this one strange thought that I couldn't get out of my head the whole time. And it was this, that like just 2 weeks before, me and some other humanitarian workers, we all huddled around this computer, this laptop, and we watched the movie Saving Private Ryan. And for some reason, I couldn't get the scene of when they're storming the beach in Normandy. All the soldiers are coming off the boats, and the Germans are shooting at them, and you can hear the and the bullets whizzing by, and it's clanging off the boat. I remember driving thinking, man, Steven Spielberg is amazing. Like, it sounds just like that, really. Like, he got it spot on. It really sounds just like that. So I'm kind of grinning and smiling like, oh, dude, it's just crazy, And then I pulled through the ambush. The guys behind limping on the rim. We got just far enough out of the way where we could change the tire. We didn't feel like they could run us down on their horses. And then I wasn't smiling anymore. The freaked out part came, for sure. And I remember just looking, checking the gas tank, making sure the other one was okay. And I remember looking, tracing some of the bullet holes. And one of them in particular caught my eye. They were all shooting at me because I was driving the lead vehicle, so they shoot the lead driver. One of the bullets had gone right through my back window, and it was coming right for the back of my head. I could see it because I had a chlorine tablet box, a cardboard box, right behind my seat that was just sitting there. And the bullet, you could see the line because there was like a curly cue of like cardboard where the bullet had traveled. And it was coming like right here or whatever. And I followed that line on the cardboard box, and right before it got to my middle of my back, it just took a 90-degree turn and just went that way and slammed into the side of the truck. I remember like looking like that, like bullets don't go sideways once they're going straight. It just didn't make any sense to me. I remember looking, and sure enough, I went to the side of the truck, found the bullet, I dug it out, and I ended up wearing it around my neck for a long time. I don't know, I kept thinking after that. It definitely shook me up, and I needed, the organization was great. They gave me a couple weeks break to kind of think about, do I really want to keep doing this work, and it was a hard decision, but I ended up coming back to finish my work, and I kept working around there. And the United Nations was great. They decided to airlift me into a lot of the areas and drop me in by helicopter so I wouldn't have to drive anymore. But I remember thinking, I wore that bullet around my neck, and I'd look at it and think, I don't know, maybe this is what I'm supposed to be doing, It was almost in a weird way, like a tap on the back, like a confidence booster, like, this is it, And so I got excited thinking, even after that, I can do this. I'm going to do this work. We're going to keep going with this organization. And just about 2 weeks before I was to come home from Darfur, all my guys were coming back into work on a Saturday morning. I gave them Friday off because Friday's the Muslim holy day, so that all my guys go and pray and do their thing. I'd pay them on Thursday so they can bring the money for that week for their wives and their children. And they all came back Saturday morning except for one. One of my friends named Ismail didn't show up to work, and he's never late. He's always early, waiting outside for us. And so I just didn't understand. And then finally his brother came later. He grabbed me by the hand. He didn't speak good English. He just said, Mr. Doc, you come with me. And so he grabbed me and took me, they took me to the edge of our village where everyone buries their dead. And next thing I know, I'm reaching in the back of the pickup truck, and with him, his brothers, and his father, I'm pulling Ismail. He's wrapped in linen, and hopping down the grave. And they were teaching me, how to bury someone properly in the Islamic law, and going down and handing me the shovel and allowing me to help dig. And it was like a blur. It was a crazy day. And I was very honored to be asked that. They knew my background. They knew where I had come from. But to have that kind of respect that they would allow me to partake in this ceremony was a huge thing for me. And so I remember going throughout all that, and then I heard the story from the brother with my translator was there, he said, you know, the morning he was coming back to work, just like always, and the John Weed stopped his bus. He was on a bus with a lot of people, pulled all the people off the bus and was questioning them. We don't know what they were questioning about. Let everyone else back on the bus, but they put Ismail down on his face and then they executed him. And I remember walking away from his grave just completely defeated, thinking that it was, you know, I don't know what they were asking him, but I just couldn't help but think that this was my fault, that they must have found out that he was one of my guys and was with me that day, and, you know, I don't know what, but it was really, really difficult for me. I kept thinking, you know, this guy was a husband and a father. I had nobody at this time. I had no wife, no kids, no nothing. And so why wasn't I the guy that lost his life back a few weeks ago? And why does it have to be Ismail? You know, so I really took it hard and had a hard time. And so I'd love to tell y'all that I came home from Darfur excited, motivated, ready to start Wine to Water. But honestly, right when I landed on U.S. soil, I got home and I was like, I don't think I can do this. This is not what I signed up for. You know what? I think I'm just going to go back to playing Johnny Cash and doing some bartending. You know, maybe I'll raise some funding here and there, but I can't do this anymore. And I probably would have given up, hands down, had I not met my wife. I met her in a bar, of course. I came home and I was craving like some Leonard Skinner or some type of Southern classic rock, you know, and sure enough, right in town, a few days after coming home, there was a Leonard Skinner band playing. I get there, I'm pretty emo at the time, a little emotional. I didn't want to deal with anybody, so I found the darkest corner of the bar. I'm back there. I got my beer in my hand, and my beer miraculously transformed into a microphone so that when Freebird came on, I'm like, I'm as free as a bird. Like doing my own thing, being that weird guy in the corner that nobody wants to talk to, right? So I'm back there, and next thing you know, the door swings open, and this whole group of smoking hot girls walks in the bar. And I'd been in the desert for a year. Okay? So I look, and I'm like, whoa. But wait a minute. I realized quickly that I never really had any game to begin with before I went to Africa. And if I did, whatever game I had was gone. And on top of that, every guy in the world will tell you, you never hit on a girl in a pack of other hot girls. It just never works out. The odds aren't in your favor, you know? So I'm like, I'm as free as... You know, I went back to doing my own thing. And next thing I know, a couple minutes later, I get a tap on my shoulder. And I turn around. It's the smokingest, hottest one in the whole group had come up to me, tapped me on the shoulder, stuck out her hand, and she said, hi, my name's Amber. What's your name? And I was like, hi, my name's Doc. It's nice to meet you. And she's like, oh, Doc, is that your real name? That's different. And I'm like, well, yeah, you just call me Doc. Just call me Doc. Everybody's called me Doc since I was little. She's like, well, what's your real name? And I'm like, you just call me Doc. And she did one of these things. She was like, what is your real name? And I'm like, lady, I just met you. How can you be demanding my real name? For God's sakes. I'm like, all right, well, okay, look, when I was born, my parents, they named me Dixon. But my sister, who was 2 years older and just learning to talk at the time, she couldn't pronounce Dixon, so she called me Dick Doc, okay? So, for a handful of very not fun years, I was called Dick Doc. Somewhere along the way, they dropped the Dick, they left the Doc, and that's how I got Doc, okay? For God's sakes. And she just laughed, and she said, oh, well, I like Dixon better. I think I'll call you that. And we hit it off pretty famously from the start. It was like one of those real cheesy Nicholas Sparks books that you read, you know. But she was exactly what I needed at exactly the right time in my life to pull through, hands down, the absolute most difficult thing that I had ever faced in my life. And I would have never continued with Wine to Water, I don't think, had I not met her. And it took a while. It took me like a year to pull myself together and months without having the nightmares and the things that I, had to deal with. And but I remember right after we got married, one night she just looked at me, and I was still playing music and bartending. And I had a few other odd jobs that I was doing, while I was trying to figure out how this wine to water thing was going to work. And she was like, "It's time. It's time for you to do this with all your heart, with everything that you've got." And the next day I did. And I went out. Very first day, we found an office that was given to us for free. Not long after that, had our first hire that came on board who was willing to come work for us for free. And we never looked back. The very first place that we went after that was Ethiopia. You'll see this picture here. I met a group of orphans. They came from the same orphanage in Ethiopia, and they made this drilling machine. Their orphanage in Ethiopia decided, we're not going to just adopt these kids out all over the world. We want to teach them skills. So they were taught engineering, and they made this pump that was doesn't need any type of mechanical devices. It's all done by hand and through a pulley system. That thing I'm holding in my hand is actually the axle of a Land Cruiser, of a vehicle. They pound a hole in the ground until they hit water. So it's local guys, local materials, helping their local people there access clean water. So that was the very first place we went. We've been supporting them since 2007. After that, I went to Cambodia. I met a guy there who was willing to partner with me. We drilled 4 wells in 2007. Cost us about $2,500 a piece to drill a well. The next year, he's like, I think we can do better. I think we could drill for cheaper. I think we can make our own drilling machine out of local parts so that when it breaks down, we can fix it with local materials. And the same with the pumps. So I let him go, and a few months later, we were drilling wells for 5 times less the cost. We now drill wells in Cambodia for under $500, and we've drilled over 500 wells all throughout Cambodia using local people, local materials, doing that work. Uganda, I found out that there's places that have plenty of water all over. It's just filthy. It's not clean. So you don't need a brand new well. You just need a way to clean that water. So I met a group of local Ugandans that were making these big concrete boxes that are biostim filters to clean the local water supply there. And the last picture I'll show you is in Haiti. It was a difficult spot. I got there right after the earthquake, and I never thought I'd see anything that would affect me like Darfur, and Haiti proved me wrong. It was a difficult place to be. But the fix that we had there in Haiti, same thing. I met a woman on the same island in the Dominican Republic that was able to provide us these filters that are made from like clay pots, just like a flower pot, except for she makes them to where they filter out water. We're able to get 99.999% clean water out of there. It'll last a family of 8 to 10 Haitians 5 years of clean water in that one bucket right there, and it costs us about $30 to $35 to make. So we brought over about 2,000 of those right after the earthquake, and then she agreed to help teach and train the local Haitians how to make their own filters. So now in Haiti, we have our own water filter factory run by Haitians, and we're producing between 800 to 1,000 filters every single month from our Haitian factory. Now I look back at all this, the whole journey, the last kind of 10 years of where it's all come from, and I'm excited about the work we've done. We're now in 15 countries. Syria, I just added Syria back in December. I was there, and it's another story in and of itself, a crazy place. 15 different countries. We've reached hundreds of thousands of people around the world. And I look back at this journey, and I think, I love the work that we're doing, the life-saving gift of clean water. But I think something else I think about more and I remember more than just the water. And it's the people, hands down. So this last picture I want to end on and show you kind of, I feel like sums up this whole journey that we've been on. This last picture, I met this woman and her child in the worst of the worst slums that I had ever been in, out in the outskirts of Kampala, Uganda. And I remember sneaking up in the slums. I hadn't met her yet. I just seen them, this lady and her daughter drinking water. We just provided filters. And they were sitting there giggling and laughing and having the best time ever. And I remember snapping a shot. They didn't know I took it. And this is like my favorite picture of all times because I feel like it represents my entire journey over the last 10 years. A lot of times I think about, we've been able to help a lot of people get clean water. But if I really think hard about it, I feel like maybe they've taught me and helped me way more than I've ever helped them. Because when I see them, they lived basically in a trash dump. They had nothing, absolutely nothing. And they were happy. They were smiling. And that's what I see in the field. When I look at this picture, it reminds me of the people that I see. I don't see them with down faces and flowers all over their face, and I see this when I travel. So there's one thing I want y'all to think about when I leave is that it's the people in our life that make our lives worth living. It's the relationships that we build along the way. It's not just the day-to-day grind of our job and punching numbers or whatever. It's the people that you get to interact with on a day-to-day basis that make your life that much more worth living. So y'all, thank you guys so much for having me here today. It's been an absolute honor. Thank you.
Hold on, we got a little something for you here.
Thank you so much. I got it.
Like everyone else here, I'm almost speechless. And thank you for bringing the inspiring message to us here at Kscope. You're proof that one person can make a difference. You're proof that one person can really change the world. As a small token of our appreciation and something for you to remember us by, we have a commemorative kaleidoscope for you. Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you.